the DOJ that, but you make a good point, Senator.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does. I mean, what's crazy? That's the guy who did the spying. Oh, yeah, you make a good point. We didn't think about that. It's crazier that if Trump hadn't won, we actually would not have known about any of this.
Would the senators, donors, organizations, and individuals who were surveilled and subpoenaed have ever learned about the Arctic Frost investigation had Trump not won in 2024?
Probably not, mainly because of these non-disclosure orders, but also, I mean, the fact that a lot of these records we're now just learning about them because they were in these prohibited access files only available to the FBI director. So if the FBI director was a Democrat, there's no reason to think we'd know about them.
Well, you see why they were trying so hard to put Trump in jail? All the charges they were throwing at him while he was running. Look, if he had been convicted of everything they wanted, it would have amounted to like over 700 years in prison for like a 78-year-old dude at the time. Because they knew if Trump won, this was going to come out. The incentive was not justice, it was to crush him for their own survival. I would have just disbanded the entire FBI if it was me. But this level of corruption, I don't think is fixable. Here, another perfect example.
Let me ask you this. Would you be troubled if tomorrow the Trump Department of Justice issued a subpoena for the phone records of every Democrat that sits on the Judiciary Committee?
Not if it was based on factual evidence, specific and articulable facts.
Well, let me be clear. I'd be damn troubled. And that would be an abuse of power. And I'm going to predict not a single Democrat's going to say even a word about the abuse of power on their side, and that double standard is troubling.
But we just proved to you that there was no proof. So much so that the justification for keeping it a secret warrant, as you know, why it matters to you and I, folks. Look, this should matter to you, me, Democrats, whatever, because if the Justice Department can secretly wiretap U.S. senators explicitly against the law, as Ted Cruz just noted, and the Speaker of the House even raid the former president's home with lethal authorization, collude with local prosecutors like Fulton County, Arizona, and Arizona, they can investigate regular Joes to such an extent that they bankrupt them simply because they asked a question about inconsistencies in an election. Imagine what they can do to you and I. They would destroy us. They would make the process the punishment just because simply we said something that the person in power didn't like.
Ask a fucking question.
They're trampling on your rights while you want to do by calling Trump supporters a threat to democracy. The fact that they still think that they were justified in this hearing, they thought they were justified because apparently you and I are an enemy to the republic and a threat to democracy. One of the subpoenaed former FBI agents that was part of this partisan witch hunt to this day still believes that there was no weaponization, that politics played no role in the Jack Smith investigation.
And Mr. O'Leary, are you okay with it being weaponized to go after conservatives? Does that suit you? Did you think that was a justifiable use of taxpayer money and time?
Senator, absolutely not. And let me just tell you, politics in the FBI workspace are absent. Nobody understands or knows
it's absent?
or cares.
Do you want to own that statement? No, it's my time.
Hold on a second. The fact that he thinks that is the problem right there. His demeanor. You're never going to fix a system if people like that are running investigations. Like, dude, you are public enemy number one by the majority of the country for what you did. And then the guy you tried to destroy, he ended up winning, thankfully. He's president now. And you sit there with your smug self saying, no, we did everything above board. We did everything right. After years of hindsight, a national election that didn't go the way you thought it was going to go, and after all the election analysis, this pencil head over here thinks that, nope, we did everything right. And Senator, let me finish. Shut up. There is no reforming that. You just have to fire them en masse.
He loves the Constitution. He fights for what's right. He hates the bad guys. He's a freedom warrior. He's your freedom warrior. Watch Carl Higby every weekday on Newsmax.
Time it is day 40 of the partial government shutdown, and a deal to fund Homeland Security has yet to materialize.
So we told the Senate Republicans proposed a plan to President Trump, got it
endorsement. It would fund almost all of DHS aside from ICE removal operations. Now Democrats are saying, no deal, because it does not include the reforms they have been pushing for. Let's listen.
Look, you know what we've called for all along. I'm not going to get into specifics, but we need strong reforms, and we need to rein in ICE. We've been consistent in what we've been asking for from the get-go.
About this back and forth with the Hills Drew Petrova. Morning, Drew.
Morning.
The Republicans say Democrats...
This is a big department, right? It includes a bunch of different operations, including we see at the airports, TSA agents, also ICE, and this removal process where the Trump administration is trying to remove large numbers of illegal immigrants from the country. So after what happened in Minneapolis, where two people were killed by federal agents, Democrats said, we're not going to fund DHS until you rein in ICE. Republicans said that's a non-starter. ICE is a critical part of this. We're not going to go along with it. That's why we're in this shutdown. Now Republicans went to the White House and said, look, we think we might be able to get a deal forward here. Maybe we fund everything else in DHS, TSA agents, get those lines gone. We'll remove specific parts of ICE that Democrats have a problem with, and then move that in a reconciliation package on party line later. Democrats are saying, after weeks of saying, we will fund the rest of government, but not ICE, now Democrats are saying, wait, this isn't exactly the deal we agreed on here, because this does fund about half of ICE, not the most controversial parts of it, but Democrats are saying, look, if you want to fund any parts of ICE, we want these reforms included, so that's why we're kind of back to this stalemate right now. Let's hear some lawmaker reaction. Guys, if you can, play the bite from Senator John Kennedy. This is on what Chuck Schumer had to say about the demands for ICE, and then follow that up with Virginia Senator Tim Kaine.
I don't blame Senator Schumer for trying, but I would, if I were he, and he's more experienced than I am, I would proceed very cautiously, because if he wants to change the deal at this juncture and refuses to go along, we'll just withdraw all concessions and do the whole DHS budget reconciliation.
The lines that are stressing people out, the fact that we have coasties who are deployed on Navy ships where the sailors are getting paid and they're not, that we have states that are planning on emergency prep and FEMA is closed. Just open the agencies, for God's sake. We can have the reform discussion, and it doesn't have to be we decide on it in the next half an hour. Why are people waiting in lines all over the country? Just fund the agencies at the levels that you agreed you would do it, and that's what is simple.
So, Drew, that's how senators feel about it. What's going on in the House? Because ultimately, they're going to have to play a role in this as well. I think once this plan hit the Hill, it was being criticized from both sides, not just by Democrats who say, you're going to be funding part of ICE here, and we want these reforms instituted, but you also have conservatives that say, this bill doesn't include what we want. Conservatives that said we want full funding for ICE and this voting regulation bill that the president had been pushing, this plan that has been floated now to party line vote. There's a lot of conservatives that think that's a cop-out and are skeptical that Republicans will be able to move another reconciliation bill this year before an election, because it kind of opens up the floodgates in an election year to all these different competing ideas inside the party of what to include in that package. It did one last year. It was difficult to get it across the finish line. There's some thinking inside the Republican Party, especially on the rightward flank, saying this is not going to actually happen, and we're capitulating to Democrats by giving in and kind of relinquishing our leverage. But if they can, it means they don't need Democrats' help to pass any of this stuff, if they can agree to it. Which is what is so enticing about kind of what you saw Senator Kennedy there say, hey, we could just go alone and do this on our own. And there would surely be a lot of motivation to actually move a reconciliation package, because they could get so much in it in an important year, but it's a heavy lift, and there's some who think they're not actually going to be able to get that done.
And the clock is